My classmate, Kevin Cooper, his father committed suicide 6 weeks after we graduated from Harvard School for Boys. And Kevin went into his father's business because he was trying to repair the shame of the family. Now, Kevin is not what his father was, which was an aggressive business guy. Kevin wound up manifesting the same kinds of things his parents did as addicts, alcoholics, and abusive parents. Kevin's wife said, "Get help. This isn't good." Kevin got help. He worked with a therapist who specialized in trauma. Kevin got well, and he became a trauma therapist, opening up a clinic with his therapist, and he had a successful career helping young people deal with trauma. That is a success story, and that came from Kevin opening up slowly with his story. I didn't know about his father committing suicide until he told me.
Wow. My guest today, producer John Bard Manulis and Emmy-winning filmmaker Peter Jones, are the creators of Fortunate Sons, a documentary following the 1974 class of Harvard School for Boys. Raised for excellence and leadership, their classmates went on to face addiction, depression, burnout, broken marriages, and generational trauma until reconnecting decades later in emotional conversations that they were never allowed to have as boys.
My life partner came from the class just behind us, and he kicked me out of the house when he caught me shooting heroin. He just said, "Get out," and saved my life. I went into treatment, and he showed up, family day, partner day, and it was amazing because I never felt more loved. The partner did. In my case, he definitely saved my life because I was slowly killing myself, repressing feelings of neglect when I was a little kid. And I had to work on that stuff. And we call it in 12-step work, it's an inside job. We cannot get the answer from outside of us. We have to dig deep, but we can do it in the presence of others who have been there before.
We talk about how emotional repression shows up physically, why men often disconnect from their own needs, and how families can support healthier relationships with vulnerability and truth. Please join me in welcoming both John and Peter to the show. Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Taz. Before we get into today's episode, I just want to pause and say thank you. Your messages, your shares, your stories are the reason we make Whole Plus. Every conversation here is about connecting the science, the intuition, and everyday life together so you can feel more like yourself again. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe or follow button. It helps us reach more people who need this. All right, let's begin. Well, thank you both for being here. I feel like this is a very important conversation that we're about to have. One of the things as a mom and a wife and a colleague and friend and all the different roles that we play is that we can't have conversations around family health and we can't have conversations around women's health without talking about men's health. And it is the one aspect of health in the whole wellness and health conversation that I feel like is either ignored or incredibly polarized, and polarized into this sort of like you've got your biohackers and your gym bros, but you don't have a conversation about what's really happening underneath the surface. And that's why I really wanted you both on the show today, because I know you have both spent a lot of time in this space. You have an incredible documentary out called Fortunate Sons. And I would love for you to share with our audience what inspired you to even begin this journey of digging into where men are today and have been, and what's going on with men. I've heard people say masculinity itself is in danger, and there's a lot of threats to men across the board. So tell us a little bit about your collective journeys and how you ended up doing this fabulous documentary.
I have to be truthful and only speak from my experience, but then we found when people watch the film, it does open it up. But when I was approached, our classmates would meet on Zoom during the pandemic, and Zoom was an amazing thing that could bring people together.
And these are your classmates from high school,
Yes.
right?
John and I attended a school called Harvard School for Boys in the San Fernando Valley, part
Okay.
of Los Angeles. And during the pandemic, guys were meeting on Zoom on Sundays. And after a number of calls, I was asked, would I be interested in maybe doing a documentary because that's my business. And when I went on my first call, I must say, the truth be told, I looked at everybody when they suggested the idea and I said, guys, uh, who cares about a bunch of privileged white men as they're a more loathed demographic in America right now?
Mm, mhm.
I apologized 2 years later. I had to look at my own judgment about thinking these guys, back when we were in high school were boys who only are thinking of themselves or are bullying each other. It turned out that when we did one-on-one interviews, they opened up in a way I wasn't expecting.
Really? Well, I'm
Yes.
so amazed, first of all, that you guys started meeting during Zoom. What triggered that? Like, were you meeting before? Were all of you guys getting together consistently in the past?
No, not at all. The We had gotten together in the past over life events, like a classmate dying 10 years earlier that features into the film
Mm,
that had brought people together. But other than small groups, the whole class had sort of,
drifted.
moved on and drifted. And it's about 3 weeks into COVID, one of the guys just wrote or said, is anyone interested in seeing a friendly face? And we put together the first Zoom, and about 35 people showed up.
That's
The class
incredible.
is only, we have, at that time, we had about 85 alive. And, uh, and then they wanted to do it again, as Peter said. And then that became a monthly thing.
So how did it go from, because, again, I've been gifted to be around so many great men, but my observation has been they usually communicate in the context of sports or going
Grunts.
out or grunts. Exactly. No one really asks each other how they are or what's going on or, how they're feeling or any of these kind of deeper questions. How did you guys transition from a military class of boys, right? To, having these conversations on Zoom and then kinda getting even deeper than that. How did that happen?
It took first of all, growing up, our parents came from the greatest generation, World War II. My father did not talk about the war, and people that served in the war overseas very rarely talked about what they were going through. So now we're the first generation, the boomers after the World War II parents, and it was just children should be seen and not heard.
Mm,
So that was the kind of the operating thing, and then when we got to a military academy, it was very much children would be listening and taking orders, and once it became more progressive, well, then we're just being boys. But I think listening to one another and caring about what someone else has to say, that only came with time
mm.
and life.
I think also the fact where the story began, and really the reason we decided it could be a really interesting documentary beyond just getting that many guys to talk honestly about life. But it began because of this crucible of moment of 1968, where we were, 7 years old, marching with guns, um, in a all male Episcopal school. And around the corner, literally a few months, was Woodstock and the beginning of huge changes, like seismic changes in America and world culture for the next 5 decades,
Wow.
one after another. And so I think in a way that actually helped these group of guys because on one level, they had everything had been upended for them from what they were expected to be. And they were, to be the leaders of this society,
Right.
and everything got upended and then just kept getting upended for them. And they had to evolve and change. And I think that opened them up to a certain extent by force, as they could have either just shut down or rolled with it to some extent. And for the most part, they rolled with it. And then by the time we started having these conversations, they were at a point in their life where the competition was less,
Mm.
the need to sort of posture, the need to the power of the ego, the need to sort of strut and pretend that you were doing great or keep up the facade, which we've all seen in reunions over the years and things,
Oh,
was
yeah.
kind of gone. And they were
Uh-huh.
ready to actually talk about life.
Wow. So it's so interesting because I feel like that time almost mirrors today to a certain extent, right?
Yeah.
Where there's been assumptions about what your destiny is, what your leadership
Yeah.
role is, and they've fallen apart or they've been blown up by shifts in culture and shifts in society. And I feel like that's what a lot of men today are experiencing as well. I think we've seen some of that even with, what resonated in some of the elections recently and what's resonated across the board is that, men trying to hold on to something. What has been your observation and what comes out in the documentary when it comes to being raised with privilege and being raised with assumption and then having that kind of pulled out from under you? What does that do to the male psyche and the male ego and how do they react to that?
Again, speaking from my own
Too
personal
loaded of a question.
Yeah, well, no, I heard I get it.
Yeah.
Very bearing.
Within that, it's speaking from my own
Yeah.
experience, having come from privilege, uh, and the kind of background children should be seen and not heard, I went through, some emotional I had some mental illness in my life, depression, that, I've been able to deal with, and basically what I needed to learn how to do was talk through things I've been keeping inside
Mm. Mhm.
most of my life. Again, fear of I could never be what my father was because he was a master of the universe in his world. He ran a multinational corporation building airplanes during the Cold War.
Wow.
And so I imagined myself staying like a little child. And when I got to be, went into puberty, I kept my voice like a child's voice.
Really?
And now I understand through lots of therapy. Of course, I'm still waiting to get that hug. And look, I figured a lot of stuff out, but it was through getting a lot of help, getting sober, uh, and really learning that the skill set I developed as a defense when I was a kid, which was sizing up a room and being a people pleaser,
Mhm.
worked well in my career as a journalist and a filmmaker because you have to learn how to listen and earn people's trust very quickly. And like the classmates, they were able to tell me things because they knew they could trust me and they knew that I would answer any question they had about my life because I was going so deep with the questions about their life.
Interesting. So, as you're talking to your classmates and you guys are getting into these deeper conversations, are there themes emerging? Are there themes like everyone was parked in ego, like you talked about, but underneath that, there was a whole lot of stuff going on? What did you guys see or hear as these conversations continued?
A lot of fathers and sons stuff, obviously, and relatively consistent, I think, of um, guys who had to find that it was okay, in fact, good to make their own way,
Hmm.
to not necessarily do what was expected of them, but to figure out what they wanted to do and take that step. And sometimes that took decades to do. Sometimes it took the death of a parent to do. Um, you know, I think that was consistent, across a pretty broad range of people.
Is that what you saw as well? Is that a big theme for men? That the pressure of what their father did or the pressure of what, their family
Expectations.
expectations of
Right.
their family, is that what does that feel like for men?
I'll tell you, the way you asked the question of me, I would be aware with the guys that we would be heading in that direction. But if I were to come out and say, well, tell me about the pressure you felt coming from your father, the thing would happen where they would clam up. In fact, my hair is beginning to stand on end because I understand that. So I was very sensitive about that because I
Mm.
could tell when a conversation they were really talking about the father son dynamic, but I couldn't come out and actually say
Ask
that
that question.
because men keep things in. And even when they were being open and expansive, I was ever mindful that that clamshell could close just like that.
I know that clamshell well. I see it.
Yes.
I see it in the exam room. I see it at home. I know all about that
Well, roles
clamshell.
are a comforting thing,
They
Sure.
are,
you
but
know?
how do we so this idea that men continue, to really rely on emotional repression, right? I think both of you talk about that in the documentary, that they push it down and cover it up and cover it up. And to even your point as a classmate, you can't ask that question, leave alone, somebody else in their family can't ask that question or they're going to get the clamshell.
Yeah.
How do you help men or help educate men to understand what emotional repression, first of all, looks like? and what it's doing to them, and how, to your point, I think you both bring this up in the documentary, how it leads to a cycle of addiction, anxiety, and mental health disorders.
Well, it's taking the time to let them know, like I'm looking at you now directly and talking, not losing contact, because I knew when I'm interviewing something and it goes deep, if I even look down, it can break the trust.
Mm,
So I learned early on in my career as an interviewer to just stay with the person I'm talking to, and especially a classmate who is going deep in ways he never has before. I'm there to say, I won't abandon you.
Mhm.
I'm here. No matter what happens, I'm not going to go away, which sounds like daddy talking to a kid.
right.
I'm cutting to the chase, but that's the dynamic because I'm so sensitive to that. And they open up because they see that I'm present for them 100%.
What were some of those conversations like that you guys were having with them? Give us some examples. What was coming out?
Well, my classmate, Kevin Cooper, his father committed suicide 6 weeks after we graduated from Harvard School for Boys. And Kevin went into his father's business uh, because he was trying to repair the shame of the family. Now,
Mm,
Kevin is not what his father was, which was an aggressive business guy. Kevin wound up manifesting the same kinds of things his parents did as addicts, alcoholics, and abusive parents. Kevin's wife said, "Get help. This isn't good." Kevin got help. He worked with a therapist who specialized in trauma. Kevin got well, and he became a trauma therapist,
wow.
opening up a clinic with his therapist, and he had a successful career helping young people deal with trauma.
Mm.
That is a success story, and that came from Kevin opening up slowly with his story. I didn't know about his father committing suicide until he told me.
Wow. Any
Right.
others? Is there a story that you remember and sticks in your
Well,
mind?
there's stories I don't remember, more interestingly, I think, which is that, we all grew up together, and some of our parents were friends. We were in each other's houses. We were close, a lot
Mhm.
of these guys, right? And there was very little, if any, recognition of stuff that was going on behind the scenes, with friends who I learned through this process had dire issues going on with their parents, um, with being abused by a parent, with parents being abused by the other parent,
And this is in your community,
in
a
our community,
privileged community
right?
that
With things that they had to struggle to figure out and deal with through the course of their life. I was in those houses intimately
Mm.
and
knew about
never
this.
knew about it. Now, admittedly, you're not as curious at that age, and you're really just doing what you can do to have experiences together, but still, you're very sensitive. The antenna are out, and I didn't know that. I mean, someone's father is tough, or someone's father is a playboy, or someone's
Right.
father's, but you don't know any of the we didn't know any of the details behind it, and that was fascinating to experience that, and fascinating in the sense of what it changed in our relationships, because you're suddenly more intimate with each other
Right.
and having that knowledge of each other. And in a way, Peter and I were at an unequal part of that, because we were doing interviews. We were seeing the tapes of people. Peter was doing the interviews, but I was seeing tapes of everybody, and they don't know the same things about us.
Mm.
So there was an inequality we had to work on evening out and getting the trust.
So these men are having these conversations with both of you. You guys are
And
getting
with each other.
and with each
There were
other.
these
This
Zooms
is
every
like a
month with
camaraderie almost of
15,
sorts.
20 of them. Yeah.
And they're becoming vulnerable. They're expressing intimacy, right? So many men don't have that opportunity, right? And so many men are not in a community where that can happen naturally. What are some of the patterns that you guys could identify that was coming out of some of these conversations of where if a anyone listening today, whether they have, like we were talking before, a father, a brother, a husband,
Right.
whoever, or we have men listening, what are some of the patterns that maybe they could start to self-identify or the people around them could start to identify as, hey, this is a pattern of emotional repression. It may be helpful to be a part of what? get therapy, be a part of a group? What are sort of, if, putting my doctor hat on now, if we're trying to identify, right, and then trying to guide, what are the signs and symptoms? You caught me in just a second ago, like, don't ask about the father. Like, what is the right way to approach that conversation? And where do we push them? Like, where do we get them to go so we don't get the clamshell?
Well, you said the two, don't you love metaphors that stick?
I
So
love the
it works.
clamshell.
I'm telling
I
you.
know.
But you talked about individual therapy and group therapy,
Mhm.
and I was part of a men's group for many years, and I had individual therapy. And it gets back to, again, the father. My father, only just before he died, told me family secrets.
Mm.
And the bigger issue was I was able to watch my father finally unburden himself of things that had caused him great pain. And I was there comforting him, though I would have really benefited from knowing those family secrets
Earlier.
decades prior.
Yeah.
And what I learned was that they're gone now, and I love both my
Right.
parents, but I'm using them as a teaching
Mhm.
tool right now. My mother's father committed suicide
Mm.
on my 14th birthday. So I thought, Gramps died, you're 14. What does a kid think?
Old age or
Or it's my
Or my
fault.
fault somehow.
And I never was told that for about 25 years. And then my father also told me about how abusive my mother could be physically towards us. And also, he acknowledged she was abusive towards him.
Oh my
There was an
gosh.
event that I only knew about when I had one of my first troubling episodes and saw a psychiatrist with my father, who brought me in to see the doctor. And the doctor asked me about my mother, and I wasn't able to say anything. And my father jumped in and said, well, how could you trust a woman who grabbed her daughter by the ankles and yanked her out of bed and bounced her head on a wooden floor?
Oh my God.
Holy crap. My father gave me the biggest gift, because that really opened up understanding. 30 years passed, though, and he said, you remember I told you that story? I said, Dad, I never forgot it. You know what happened after she bounced your sister's head on the floor? She spun around and looked at me and said, you know why she's a rotten kid? Because of your bad seed.
Oh boy. Yeah.
And I just said, Dad, I am so grateful that you were able to finally get that out.
Mm.
Then so many things came together. And for guys out there, just tell the truth and take the time, get help, or just call a friend and earn the trust, because it will be there. Because if you've known these guys for a long time, like this guy is one of the finest human beings I've ever known. When we were kids, we're just kids. We didn't even know it.
Who knew?
But this was this is the best working relationship I've ever had with someone collaborating. He's an amazing human being. He's a kind person. He's a sensitive person, and he's a smart person. So have I answered the question? I don't know, but the key is just listen to one another, because the secrets, we are as sick as our secrets.
We are as sick as our secrets.
And you asked sort of how to open that door
Yes.
with people. And I think no one, men or women, like to be told what to do. We all bring up the barriers
Right.
when someone
Boxing
is
gloves.
prescribing
Yeah.
to us.
Yeah.
And unless you've hit the bottom, which is, with addiction, or even as you mentioned with Kevin, in terms of being open to his wife saying you need help, he had to get to a certain point where that would not have been resisted. Right. I think what Peter's saying is really important, because it's important to say, to ask somebody, not to be prodded into it, but to say, I have something I want to talk about. I have something that is painful. I have something I want to share, and get the trust back in that moment. Make sure that you get the moment of trust that I'm here with you, and I'll be here for you, and take your time. We can come back to it again, whatever, but you have to take that first step, because if it's the partner doing it, you're going to clam up.
Right.
And the minister at my wedding said something really extraordinary that I've used when I've officiated weddings since. And one of our classmates, 40 years later, Brad, said to me in this process, I remember, I was at your wedding, and I remember what Clark Oler said, and it changed my life. And I've held it ever since and changed his life. And it was basically in the marriage, in the advice that was being given by the minister. I think he said something to the extent of, there will be a time when one of you goes into an extremely dark place and you don't see your way out. You don't know how to get out. You don't know if you want to get out. You don't know what to do. And as the partner, you won't know what to do. And the only thing you can do is say, I will be here for you when you come out.
Got chills.
I will be here for you when you come out, and I need you to know that. And then live to that. Live that oath. And Brad remembered that and found that it changed his life and his marriage as a permission structure in a way. So I think that's how people open up, is they model behavior, they see something, they hear something, they take it on themselves, and then they act on it.
So for the men listening to us today, I think we are trying to gently say, be open. Find someone you can be open with, because we are as sick as our secrets, and emotional repression leads its way to addiction and all kinds of other issues down the road. I see it in the exam room as inflammation, as cortisol, as hormone collapsing, as disease patterns, right? So we're in alignment and thinking how these two things are very much connected together. But for the partners, because I've sat with both, right? I've sat with partners, and I'm in both roles too, personally. You always want to fix something, like, I just want to fix this. I want to fix it for you. Here's an appointment. Here's a this, here's a that.
And I'd like to fix it quickly.
And I'd like to fix it quickly because we got to get on with our lives and we have stuff to do, right? So that's, from listening to both of you, that seems to be the most counterproductive strategy that any of us could employ as partners, from the conversations that both of you seem to have had with all the men in your class.
Again,
I think so.
another personal experience. My partner, in fact, it was an all-boys school, but my life partner came from the class just behind us at Harvard School, and we've been together since 1973. And he kicked me out of the house when he caught me shooting heroin. He just said, get out, and saved my life. I went into treatment, and he showed up, family day, partner day. And it was amazing because, working with a therapist, he was like, I don't want to say a drill sergeant, but it was a good thing, that just really paying attention. Is Peter really getting it? His name is Peter too. But the point was, I never felt more loved. But it was so, get out.
In that action, you felt love.
In that, no, that action, you know what? I can't analyze
Not at the
it.
time,
I'm in the moment. I'm shooting dope.
Yeah.
But he just said, get out. And then, like, my worst nightmare is that I'm abandoned. But you know what? I made that happen because of my behavior.
Right.
But in retrospect, I thought, wow, he just said no, like Kevin Cooper, his wife saying,
tough love.
This isn't good, tough love.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, yes, the partner did. In my case, he definitely saved my life because I was slowly killing myself, repressing feelings of neglect when I was a little kid. And I had to work on that stuff. And we call it, in 12-step work, it's an inside job. We cannot get the answer from outside of us. We have to dig deep, but we can do it in the presence of others who have been there before. And we call those sponsors and sponsees. But I always tell a sponsee, I will never leave you. There's nothing you're going to do that's going to scare me off. There's nothing you're going to say that will scare me off, because I've been there. And you only listen to people who have been there
and walked a similar road, and that's that trust component,
and being told that you will be there. And I think that's the key, actually, in that way. I also want to say, just for for the balance of this, I've never been in therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that experience at all. I've never been addicted. I don't know the 12-step experience at all. And I agree with all of that. And I think there's a certain intuitive element to that. If you listen to and you think about how you want to be treated, and you think about how you react to situations and to people pushing you, there's a understanding of what kind of trust is needed and desired, and it's up to you to create that space. And I've always found it, actually, from my point, as I said, not having been in therapy, but I've always found, you look for, I wouldn't say superpowers, but you look for things that are part of your power with people or with groups of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always found mine was about opening up, that was part of a way to be unique, to engender trust, to create relationships. And ultimately that's what you're looking for, is bonds and people to feel like they can have a specific relationship with you. And that was always something I don't mean to say used, because it sounds manipulative,
Right.
but something that I felt
You had a
was
gift.
was
That was a
valuable,
gift.
was
Yeah.
valuable to do.
That's a gift. And again, I think that dynamic between trust, vulnerability, opening up,
Yeah.
the partner having strong boundaries, it sounds like. Then we need to have
Correct.
like any partner needs to have boundaries with what they deem is acceptable versus unacceptable, right? Is that what I'm hearing from both your
Oh.
experiences? Is
At a
actually
certain point,
gift.
I think if you have the boundary, if you exercise the boundaries too soon,
Right.
you shut someone
Well, you
off.
shut someone
Yeah.
off. But like if it is a non-negotiable line, or if
Yeah.
it is something that is creating havoc in the family home or hurting other people within the home, that's a boundary that
Right.
the partner almost has a responsibility to stay true to. And in a loving way, as you just, mentioned in your own personal story, actually motivates the other person to move forward, without having to necessarily say a whole lot, which I think is incredible. When we go back to the boys from Harvard and they become men, how many of them
Some of them.
Some
Yeah.
good point.
Very good
Good
point.
point. But anyhow,
Very good
but
point.
as hopefully most of them became men, how many of them were in this cycle of emotional repression that then led to addiction or divorce or anxiety or mental health disorders?
I can speak for, I contacted probably 75% of the guys, interviewed 30.
Okay.
And of the 30, I would say about 25 of the 30 talked about rough patches in their life that they had gone through. And okay, if you look at the class of 100, those are guys that are still keeping things in and choosing not to participate because, a lot of people said, that's high school. I don't need to, I don't want to go back there. And I was the one who said, well, I'm not interested. These guys, we came from privilege, who'd be interested. That's my own judgment. But once we did get talking, guys would talk about the dark stuff, but to get to the light. And with every one of the stories that are in the film Fortunate Sons, there's a transcendence where you actually are living what they went through. And by how they're telling the story, they are not unhappy, damaged people. There are people who have healed themselves.
Mhm.
I know we talk about Johnson's like, hey, you don't want to make it look like everybody's messed
Right,
up.
right.
And I didn't see that. I saw it just together, candid, wonderful, whole men. Not everyone is like that in life, but they were modeling, and that's why I think the film works so well when people watch it, particularly women. They respond because they're watching men talking candidly. They're also watching men listening to one another.
Right.
Are men watching the documentary? What are they saying when they watch the documentary?
Well, the first thing they say is, it's not what I expected.
Really?
Yeah.
What were they expecting?
Well, something about Zoom conversations or a reunion or, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
vulnerability talks. I don't really know. I mean, it's the interesting thing we found in showing the film to people and having it out there, and it's out there pretty widely now at this point, is that as much as it's a very specific slice of our society, and the story is a very specific one that comes from privilege, and demographically it's very narrow, and
Right.
it's very universal in what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously privilege hasn't protected any of these guys, but that's not the story. There's no feel sorry for us in this. What there is these are universal human
Right.
experiences that everyone, man, woman, 20, 30 to 90, seem to be relating to, and seem to be able to connect to their own families and their own experiences, their own friendships. That's been really powerful.
Well, I love this documentary because I think it does tell the story of men and men coming together in a healing way, coming
Mhm.
together in community, how community heals, how friendship heals, how, part of me, as you guys are both talking, I'm like, do we need to make emotional suppression like a diagnostic, criteria
Mm.
to force people to like be like, oh my gosh, this is me, because sometimes it takes a minute before you get to that realization that you're in that pattern. So I think the documentary is incredible that way. Selfishly, but also bringing us forward a little bit because, this was, as you said, 1968. Men were going through a particular thing. Leadership was changing. Society was changing. We're kind of there again right now. And there's been a lot of discussion in culture about the threat to the modern man.
Right.
And I'm sure both of you have been following that and how, men are falling behind in education. They're falling behind in financial capacity. They are falling behind even in a familial role because as women take on more roles and more responsibilities, even with our own reproduction, they're finding that they're like, okay, where's the relevance of the male and of masculinity? And what does that mean today? As men struggle with this, or as mothers raise sons, or as we work in family systems, what lessons can we take from the documentary, that you guys have created and from the men that you have sort of traversed over almost like a 30, 40, 50-year history, right, in terms of how they have, charted their own journeys? What are some of the lessons we can gift to young men today, or to men that are in sort of the middle age phase of their life, whatever phase they're in.
Mm.
Or we talked about my 16-year-old son.
Yeah.
What can I tell a very driven 16-year-old of what his blind spots may be as he moves through life and enters his journey? What are some of the pearls that we can pass on?
Get off social media.
Oh my God. If I could win that one. Yes.
I'm telling you, I mean,
Yeah.
this is one thing that the parents talking to the guys that are fathers, they put a limit on, for us, I got 1 hour of television a week.
That
1
is so
hour of
true. We used to have
television.
limits.
So
That's
there
right.
was the
Yeah.
limits there, and I'm grateful for that, although I went into the business. But
Right.
I mean, then I had to play with rocks and play out in the, throwing oranges at John, and we played together with other kids. Today, kids are playing with a screen, and it's not real. And the advice up and down would be, get them out of the schools, put your phones, in a box and lock
And
it up.
it's fascinating because at the same time, parenting has changed from being relatively hands-off to being very
Very
hands-on.
hands-on.
And
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
and it turns out that kids are pretty resilient, and kids make their way through any of these structures in some way, and they get damaged in different ways by different parenting along the way. And I don't think we've figured out, none of the rules are the best yet for kids.
Right.
And but in our era, they sponsored creativity, and they sponsored activity and friendships,
By
and
parents being a little bit
connecting with the
hands-off?
natural world, and by having rules and being hands off. And this current situation, can't say that parents have created the addiction to social media, but the helicoptering oversight has not obviously helped in any way that it was expected to help. That, becoming your kid's best friend, or, being deeply involved, and all the pieces of that don't seem to have yielded
The results that
any
we wanted,
noticeable
right.
result that was really different in some way, or better in some way, I should say.
Well, both of you have talked about, especially you've talked about fathers, right? And the role of the father and the secrets of the father and the influence of all of that. For the modern day father, what's the right balance? So if we're telling the dad not to helicopter and not to like obsess about every data point and every goal or whatever else that the child is doing, but we also don't want the hands-off father necessarily, right? Like what is the right role? What does a father need to do to model future masculinity?
You know what? Shared activity.
Mm.
My dad was a
I like
sailor,
that.
and my dad was a sailor, and at the time, I'm thinking it was the time I could be with my dad. I learned how to fold sails. I haven't sailed since, but that was time to be with my dad, and we had a routine: washing the sailboat, stopping for Frosty, Dairy Queen, soft ice cream now. But that was vivid in my brain, is
Mhm.
having a shared activity with my dad.
Mm.
So I would say just have a weekly shared activity that you both like. It can even be watching a game on television or
That
something,
counts.
but it's a shared activity. My father and I would play pool listening to the voice of the Dodgers, Vin Scully, calling a baseball game.
Mhm.
Those were moments I cherished. But with guys, you got to have something
Yeah.
you're doing.
You're
I
doing.
think guys
Okay.
are very
Yeah.
activity oriented. They
Yeah.
bond through actions,
Mhm.
and talk comes out of that in
Mhm.
Yeah.
fits and starts in unobvious ways. And you model behavior, or you see behavior, you see how people handle ethical situations, moral situations, but there isn't necessarily conversation about it in that way. And also, um, I think that just knowing, even if there isn't shared activity, I think the next piece would be just uh, being sure that the fact that you love them and trust them and are there for them is clear
And not of
and does
debate.
not waver.
Does not waver, no matter what, no matter what's going on or
Right.
happening. Are you worried about what looks like or feels like the increasing rates of mental health issues in young men today, addiction to different substances, drug abuse, alcoholism?
And our class, by the way, I think we've lost 15% of our class, which is above the
Wow.
average for this age.
Yeah.
And the bulk of those were suicide or addiction.
Addiction issues.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lost
So
my
it's
best friend.
it's not actually, we're not necessarily out of sync with what's going on right now.
You know what? My best friend died 12 years ago, cirrhosis. And I remember there's a photograph of us in the movie on a camping trip. And it was on that camping trip where his name was Dennis. And around the campfire, I was telling him about how I was starting to see a therapist.
Hmm.
He made fun of that.
He did.
He made fun of it. And that was the beginning of pulling away from the guy I was closest to for 15 years. And now as I look back, he didn't get that help. And I have a little notebook that I kept during a dark time, 1986, where I would write little quotes, positive things, because I knew I'd get out of it one day. And one of the notes was, ask Dennis if he wanted to go to an AA meeting on
Mhm.
Melrose Avenue here in
Mhm.
Los Angeles.
Mhm.
His response, that's too far away. Let's go to the beach. I realized, he died of alcoholism. I got sober in 1998.
Is there a way to reach friends or partners or lovers or children that are in that space?
They have to hit their own
They
bottom.
have to hit
There's
their
no
own
way you can
bottom.
short circuit it. They have to hit their bottom, and
Mm.
you'll be there when they do.
I don't know that I like that answer.
I'm sorry.
No,
But
because
it's the
for the
truth.
person on the outside, it's
Yeah.
incredibly painful.
Oh.
I mean, it's obviously painful for the person in the throes of the addiction
Right.
too, but the sense of abandonment, or the ability to step up and have the courage to be tough with love,
Yeah.
is extraordinary courage.
And it sounds like, for when we go back to the family systems and the community systems, I think reinforcing that, right, within the home or within the community.
Mhm.
I've heard trust today. I've heard openness, allowing people to be vulnerable, not pushing so they don't become clamshells, communities, asking the questions, getting off social media, creating boundaries when you're the partner or the parent. These are patterns that have emerged as things that are more successful when you're dealing with somebody in this situation. What else do you hope people will take away from this documentary?
Also, I'll answer that based on what you just said also, which
Okay.
is, by the way, because it is what happened in this documentary, which is guys developed a cohort. They developed a
Cohort.
system. They developed, whether it was 3 people they could trust or 10. I'm getting together on Friday night with 10 guys for dinner. That happened a month ago with the different 6 guys um, from our class. I mean, not, and one of the ways to deal with that courage that's needed to address those tough times is to not be alone in that. If you're dealing with a problem with the person who's closest to you or someone who's very close to you in your family, you need your own support system. You can't just be strong and courageous in dealing with it. And so that's where having a cohort of some, whether it's one person or 3 people, and women are much better at that
Right.
than men.
Right. We'll pick up the phone and call.
And that's
or-
one of the
yeah,
things,
yeah.
this sort of trusted friendship group, however big it is or small it is, that we discovered, I think, in the movie was really key.
So I think our directive then to men is to find your cohort.
Yeah.
Really build that cohort, invest in it, and I think you have to do it. I have so many female friends, obviously, but so many of them are like, I arrange play dates for my husband or for
Yeah.
my partner, right?
Oh, wow.
So, which is great. But I think at the end of the day, as a male or as a guy or a boy or whoever, start to use that muscle, like start to build that.
Right.
We talk about that a lot at home because a lot of us are driven at home and head down and trying to get things done and trying to get from point A to point B and all this other business. But trying to build community and build a cohort is a skill.
Yeah.
And it's a value that we all need to put more emphasis on when we're talking about success.
And if you don't do it in the easy time, you won't have it
You
available
won't have
to you
it later
in the tough
on.
time.
It's almost like putting dollars into a bank, right? And generating some return on it. And I think that when we're thinking about whether we're thinking about privilege or we're thinking about high achievers, or we're even thinking about anybody, like you said, demographically, I think that is a skill that I don't hear about. I don't hear people teaching that as mothers or parents or
Right.
private school institutions or colleges. Like, let's invest in the skill which is going to serve you in good times and in bad. And I think your documentary and your journeys together for all these years have demonstrated that and have really shown that. And I think there's some really incredible stories coming out of all of that. Is there anything else you want people to take away from this documentary? And where's the documentary headed, by the way? And where can people watch it? I think that
Well, it's on PBS, available on PBS stations. We're now in 86% of the United States in terms of all the PBS stations, and they can go to their local PBS outlet, and then it's going to be available on video on demand, I think, beginning of the year.
okay, amazing.
But it's on the PBS app, so it's
and
streaming.
it's on the
It's streaming
PBS
on the
app.
PBS app at the moment.
But about like what to do, I
Mhm.
was thinking learning to talk to one another, but the key is learning to listen.
Yeah.
And when someone sees that you're actually paying attention to what they're saying and not thinking about what they're going to say next, that's when the magic happens. It's interesting. I'm saying you're going to learn how to talk through feeling comfortable enough, being able to listen. Then when you talk, you're going to be listened to.
Mm.
And I totally agree. And I would add the word respect
Yeah.
into that, which I think may not be in terms of men finding the relation with men, but in terms of bridging the gaps with women, with bridging the gaps with people of different upbringings and different cultures, is go into it with respect for the other person, the same, it's that old golden rule, treat people the way you'd like to be treated yourself. And it gets you a long way there. I think privilege has been as much of an asset for me, which is kind of obvious,
Right.
And how that plays out.
Right.
But it's also been a hindrance in ways that people don't recognize, at least in the way that I've worked, because I've done a lot of my work in areas that are FEMA camps and Appalachia and Navajo Nation and kids in Jacksonville high schools and dealing with racism and a lot of places where without the ability to listen, without the ability to put my privilege aside entirely and be there on their grounds and in their reality would never work.
Respect is a big one.
And I guess it explains why after making the film, I started last quarter, I'm attending Antioch University to get a
I
master's
know.
degree
It's incredible.
in psychology. During the filming, guys would say, well, Peter, have you thought about being a psychotherapist? No. But actually, after making the film and what do I want to do next with my life, because I believe that phrase, to whom much has been given, much is expected.
Absolutely.
And in making this film, anyway, I'm going to get a degree. Hopefully in 2 years, I have to get 3,000 hours working with clients before I actually get a license. But this is my way of giving back, is, again, practicing the skill set as a listener,
Mm,
really, and
Yeah.
allowing someone to find their voice through my letting them know I'm listening to you.
that's incredible.
You asked what we're doing with the film.
Yeah.
And it is available, and we mentioned that, but we're doing something else because it actually is a film that has impact on people, and very few films do. They entertain, but this is one that actually has the ability to change people's lives. And when we realized that, we decided that you had to somehow get into the communities. You had to get below the level of just it's available on a streaming
Right.
platform or whatever. So we've been partnering with schools, with community groups, with nonprofits, churches, seniors, community centers around the country to get kind of burrow into the communities
Mhm.
where people really can take this message and bring it into their family, bring it into themselves, and have these conversations that can be really transcendent, transformative conversations. And that uh, people can put their own host their own screenings uh, for their own community groups, their own church groups, their own sports teams, whatever. And that's on our website. The ability to host your own screening, get in touch with us about it, to help support the campaign financially if you can, to help us get to more communities, because our feeling was that that's where this really can have its impact.
As you guys have both been talking, I actually want to take this to the schools.
Great.
My children are involved in.
Mhm.
What is that website?
It's fortunate-sons.com,
Okay.
and there's sections on it for host a screening. There's a page called Impact, which is where you can see what we're doing with the campaign. There's the ability to donate. All those things are on
They're on that
they're all
site,
on
and
the
we'll
one
put that up in
website.
the show notes and on the screen as well as we
Thank you.
start to play this. But this is, to me, very important. What's your hope for men and boys as we move forward?
Just never give up.
Never give up. I like that. What about you?
I have a lot of hope because I was blessed to know a man named Buckminster Fuller later in his life, was someone who was not only a major thinker, but had lived for 90 plus years and saw the sweeps of the pendulum swing. And I feel like, we're watching the pendulum swing
Mhm.
in this way, just within our own 50
Absolutely.
years of this movie, 60 years of this movie, and it will continue to. So I have hope for it, but I think we all have to bring grace to each other. We all have to respect each other. And I think we have to start to find trust and then act on that trust. And I think things will be good. We're meant to be different.
Right.
Everyone is unique. We're not meant to all somehow fit into some cookie cutter proper mold. We just have to realize that it comes out of love or comes out of respect or comes out of whatever, and that's the driving force that holds us all together.
Do you think part of the reason, and I promise this is my last question, well, maybe second to last question. Do you think part of the reason that men have more issues is that they have a little bit more of sort of, I don't want to say a fixed mind, but a structured mind where it's harder to be nimble, right? It's a little bit harder to be like, okay, I'm like women, like, oh, we're a mom one day, next day we're not. We're like an executive, the next day we're, a grandparent, like we're constantly shifting all over the place. Whereas I feel like men, kind of have a little bit more of a structured existence, period. Do you feel like that actually works against them? And maybe the challenge for the future man is to be more nimble, to be willing to change and grow, and to understand that as like the external world continues to be chaotic and present us with new challenges, the men that will win will be open, able to have conversations, have respect, but most importantly, maybe be able to be flexible and a little bit more nimble.
I think you said it all yourself, and I'd add one more word: humility.
Humility.
Have humility,
Yeah.
because, I mean, I want people to know.
And if you don't, life will give it to you.
That's true. You will be humbled by life,
Yeah.
but humility is it's a
Yeah.
wonderful word. I said, never give up, but stay humble. It's not all about you.
Mm.
Ask somebody in
Yeah.
AA, there's a line, a sponsor to a sponsee. You know when I'm going to have a sense that you're getting better? No, when? When you ask me how I'm doing.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's a good one. All right, now this really is the last question.
I'll just add one thing,
Yes,
though,
add one
because I
thing.
think I would say curiosity.
Oh, I like that.
in a big way, curiosity. And because I think that ultimately, that's where we keep evolving.
Mm,
That's where we keep growing and evolving and not getting into, and because women have been forced to be adaptable
right.
because they were sort of in a patriarchal society and they had to adapt to whatever was said or done. Men now have to sort of learn that limitations are opportunities,
Mm.
challenges are opportunities, not to be afraid of.
You guys have said so many things that I just want to hold on. You're only as sick as your secrets. Challenges are opportunities. Limitations are opportunities. Do we have any other one-liners? I feel
Clams.
clams. We can't forget about the clams. And that's the theme of the episode for sure. The clams. All right. Final question. What makes you both whole?
Taking a breath, staying present.
I love that. Staying present. So hard to do nowadays. What about you?
Caring about other people. Sort of more than myself.
I love that too, because have you always been that way? Or has it been a growth journey?
Yes,
I don't know.
Say that.
He's
yes.
always been
I
that
can
way.
answer that for
Yeah.
him. How about you?
What makes me whole is seeing others thrive. It really, I would say family. Of course, my family makes me whole too, but I think about the collective family and seeing others thrive and do better.
Hmm.
That really keeps me going.
That's great.
But this has been great. Thank you both for joining me today.
Thank
I
you. Our
appreciate
pleasure.
it. All right. Well, if you are a mom, a wife, a sister, a colleague, if you have any semblance of a guy in your life, I hope you will listen to this episode and share it with your friends. I feel really passionately as a mom of a 16-year-old, as a wife, and watching, those sort of issues come up within our family, how important it is to have our men healthy, open, able to trust us, and be vulnerable. Please share this episode with anyone you love, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Before you go, remember healing doesn't happen all at once. It happens in moments. If today's episode gave you one of those moments, subscribe and keep learning with me. The next video is right here, and it picks up right where this one left off.